authorization or the application for the FISA warrants, right? You said earlier when it came to political bias, when you move to the FISA warrants, things get murkier. I believe that was the word you used. Is that correct?
Correct.
Because you can open an investigation. I say this as a former law enforcement official myself. You can open an investigation pretty easily. You've testified today that it can be done quite easily. But when you actually start taking action, start taking steps, start gathering evidence, start surveilling Americans, that's when actually real questions arise. And your testimony today has been, and in this report, is that when that happened, there's potential concerns here about political bias. Is that correct?
We have actions taken here that were not consistent with the rules, the practices, the policies, and what we couldn't reach a conclusion on is what motivated that.
Yeah, I think that's very significant. I mean, let me just be honest with you. Here's the question that I'm struggling with. Which is worse? Is it worse to have a foreign government trying to meddle in our elections? Or is it worse to have our own government meddling in the election? Because that's, I think, exactly what this report shows. It shows that our government, the most powerful law enforcement agency in the nation, the FBI, effectively meddled in an ongoing presidential campaign. And the thing that gets me is you expect it from foreign governments. I'm not saying it's good, but I'm saying that you expect it. They've been doing it for years. Russia's been doing it for years. We know they tried to do it this last cycle. China has been doing it. Others have been doing it. And we know what steps to take. We've got to take them more effectively. But when our own government does it, how can the American people have confidence? And what do we do? I mean, what do we do? And there's one actor here, I think, who has not gotten the credit that they collectively deserve, and that's the Democrat National Committee. I just think, I've heard my friends on the other side of the aisle complain about Hillary Clinton's campaign and how ineffective it was and how the DNC didn't do a good job in 2016. I beg to differ. This is the most incredible. The DNC pays for the Steele dossier, solicits the Steele dossier, and then gets the Federal Bureau of Investigation to go get FISA warrants, surveil an American citizen, surveil a presidential campaign, all on the basis of this manufactured garbage that they paid for. I mean, that's extraordinary. That has got to be a first time in history. In fact, let me just ask you, Mr. Horowitz, are you aware ever of another presidential campaign being targeted by the FBI during the campaign like the Trump one was, to your knowledge? Has this ever happened?
To my knowledge, but I wouldn't suggest I'm an expert on.
But to your knowledge, no. You're not aware of anything like this. So, and I'm correct in thinking that the Steele dossier, the Fusion GPS dossier, was solicited by and paid for the DNC. I mean, that's correct based on what we know, isn't it?
The Clinton campaign or the DNC, it was ultimately learned by the FBI that was the case, or that came to be their belief.
And then, so we get the Steele dossier. It's fed to the FBI. The FBI goes and asks for these FISA warrants, which have all of the problems that you have articulated and that my colleagues have drawn out, including sometimes outright fabrication of evidence in these FISA applications. And then not only does the FBI get a surveillance program ongoing effectively of a presidential campaign during cycle, but they also get, the DNC also gets, news stories written during the campaign about the surveillance program. In September of 2016, there's a story about possible counterintelligence investigation of the Trump campaign. In October of 2016, there's a story about the FBI investigating the Trump campaign, and we know on that last one that that Steele himself was involved. Is that correct? In October,
that's correct, and the FBI actually ultimately knew that he was involved in the September one as well, that you're referencing, I believe.
And yet, what action did the FBI take when they knew these two facts?
Well, in November they closed him, but then met with. What
did the Crossfire Hurricane teams take? What steps did they take when they knew this about Steele, is what I should ask.
I'm sorry. Well, what happened is they closed him as a source in November, but that's when the meetings with Mr. Orr started, where he was the conduit between them. Right.
So he's still able, the FBI still takes the information just via a DOJ conduit, which is its own separate, unbelievable problem. But yet still they're taking all this information on board from Steele, even after they know that he's totally incredible. To me, this is the untold story of the 2016 campaign. And I don't know who at the DNC hatched this, but I suppose they ought to, maybe it's take a victory lap, but certainly they should be remembered for it. To get the FBI to pursue surveillance of a rival presidential campaign and then into the newly elected president's term, I think is just extraordinary. It is absolutely extraordinary. So let me ask you this. Are these individuals whose whose misdeeds that you have documented here in this report, the members, I'm thinking of the case agents, other members on the Crossfire Hurricane team, are they still, to your knowledge, working at the FBI?
To my understanding, some are, some aren't.
And why are those who are, why are they still there? What's your understanding?
I think you'd have to ask Director Wray.
And indeed, I think we should. What about the case agent who directly misled the DOJ intelligence attorney, Office of Intelligence Attorney, about Carter Page's relationship with other intelligence agencies in our government, who directly misled the OI about that? Is that person, to your knowledge, still at the FBI?
To my knowledge, that person is still there.
And is still actively working, maybe is still acting as a case agent,
I think
to your knowledge?
Have to ask.
What about procedures at the FBI? To your knowledge, what procedures have been changed at the FBI to date to prevent something like this from happening?
I think all that I'm aware of is what's in Director Wray's letter that's attached here. But certainly there are far more reforms and changes that are needed to address all of our recommendations. That's a good beginning, but there's a lot more to be done.
I will just say in closing, Mr. Chairman, that I think it is an extraordinary thing when the most powerful law enforcement agency in the country, maybe the world, is able to effectively intervene and influence a presidential election at the behest and with the cooperation of another political party. I mean, I've been saying for a long time that, you know, there's no collusion in the 2016 campaign. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think the collusion was between the DNC and the FBI, and it is, if we don't change something here, I mean, to see FBI Director Wray go out and say in the face of all of this that he doesn't think that this vindicates the FBI and he doesn't think there are any problems, I, for one, don't know how any American can have confidence in that institution and in the integrity of our elections if things like this can happen. So thank you, Mr. Horowitz, for the work you've done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here, Mr. Horowitz. And again, thank you to you and your team for your